Hey all, here is a replay version of the most recent live stream Q&A on all things Social Security that occurs every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this is with all of little silences carved out of it. So I hope it's an easier listen for those who are doing the replay versus being there live. And we'd love to see you live. So feel free to pop in. Bye-bye now. Hey, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Let me get to the comments. Hopefully you guys can chime in. What a crazy, crazy situation. I don't think Delia, can you hear me? Heather, I'm hoping it's all set up now. They came in on a flash, so that's good. Good Lord. All right. Trooper, you're a trooper. Let's see, where are we at, guys? Can you guys just double check? Can you hear me? Or Willie, what does OPE mean? Yes, Dolly, you're saying you can hear me. Awesome. All right, crazy. So I don't know about you guys, but anybody here in the Northeast? I don't know if anybody's Northeast Pennsylvania. I don't even know how far this all went out, but a ton of people in this area. And we actually skated pretty well with it, considering it was like the briefest of thunderstorm on Friday. So that was what, the 3rd? Yes, nice and clear. Okay, good. And I think we were grilling that night too, and then we're going to grill Saturday night. And it was like I felt like it was 5 minutes. Maybe it was 10 or 15, but it's when the wind was going so, and we live on a mountainside kind of, and there's a lot of tall trees in this whole community. Anyway, it takes the power out. And of course, we have like little temporary short power outages, not infrequently, but they're like a split second. And then they're back on. And this time it didn't come back on. And it was like 95 degrees. So turns out, I guess most of my community was. And then other parts of Stroudsburg, East Stroudsburg, New Jersey. I know some people that still don't have their power back on. We got it back over the weekend. We got it back on 4th of July, actually. And but it was funny because we had to drive around we had a fridge filled with food because we had bought all this grilling stuff for the weekend. And, you get worried. I'm like, don't go in the fridge. So I'm like, you'll have to drink warm beverages. So we're worried about that. We slept in our car just to have a little bit of AC until we could zonk out. I got up in the wee hours of the morning and crept back inside onto the recliner couch. You're just sitting there trying to breathe, but I figured it got a little cooler, and I was, you get uncomfortable sleeping in a car. So anyway, we got ours back on, and we'd gone out. We bought coolers, which our ones were so old and gross, and you couldn't really wash them. And we were looking everywhere for ice, had to go to multiple places for ice. We finally found ice, and I said, the second we buy this, you watch, the power's going to come on. We get home, and I kid you not, within 100 seconds, the power comes back on. Seconds. But I was like, yeah, because I said, yes, let's buy this, because as soon as we buy this stuff, our power will go back on. So anyway, so I have some, but anyway, with regard to this, everything came back on. Everything was fine. I even had internet. And I was on Zoom, a Zoom meeting. It was someone else's Zoom though. Yesterday, that worked just fine. It was something about, I think it has to do with my computer system, which is kind of significant at this point. And so I had to get someone in here this morning when I checked it out. It's like, oh my God, this isn't, connecting. And I don't really understand how, you guys know me. I don't really know how this stuff works. So anyway, between climbing around, unplugging things, plugging things back in, I don't know what new things are in there. I don't even have a bill yet for it, but whatever they did, got it up and running. So anyway, I'm so sorry it was delayed. I was like, this is not going well, but all's well that ends well. So I'm glad you guys are here. Okay, so I just see Baxter Taylor was number 1 first person in the house. Hi, Baxter. Good to see you. I'll get to your question first, of course. Dolphins in the house. Kathy Clayton, Baxter. Civil Chick is in the house. Hope you're still here. Earth One, Rain Gal, Delia, of course. Delia. Hi, Delia. Oh my gosh. Our Willie. I think I mentioned these. Heather Shante. Awesome. Okay. I will get to everybody, I promise, if you have a question. So anyway, thanks guys for being here and being patient and not giving up when you didn't see a thing at 1 o'clock. All right. Baxter Taylor asks, do you send ALJ letter before or after submitting your paperwork? What kind of letter are you alluding to, Baxter? Baxter says, I was 51 at the time of application. Now I'm 55 and we'll see an ALJ in August. Okay. Will I be judged at 51 application date or 55 time of the ALJ hearing? Everything. When did you allege your disability started, Baxter? It was probably before your application at 51. So were you saying at 49 you were disabled? Whatever age you said you're disabled as of, he's going to look to see the medicals at that time, see how strong those, the RFC stuff is, all that. See, if you go on the sequential evaluation process, which we have a playlist that goes into all that and what those are, and he'll have to judge each thing at that time frame. And usually the thing that's going to be the variable thing is the medical records, because if they're not let's say you said you were disabled at 49, a year or two before you applied at 51. They're going to look at your medicals that existed at that time. Were they strong enough to prove that he met the rules that apply to a 49-year-old at the time? And if they don't, then they keep going and say, was there any point where these records meet the under 50 standard? Then is there any point where these records meet the at 50 standard, 50 to 54? And if they do, then you're going to get your, finding of disabled back to that time, assuming you weren't working substantially or anything. And then, because it'd be nice if you don't, I want you to win overall, period. That's the biggest, most important thing. However, it would be very nice for you to have some back benefits. And you have a lot of years. I mean, if you applied 4 years ago and you're just getting to an ALJ now, Baxter, that's a very long time. It wasn't really so out of control, crazy thinking like, I don't know, back in before 2019, they were pretty long for a while, people would wait a couple years for their ALJ hearing after they appealed, but that got much better around 2019 or so. But yeah, that's a really long time. So it'd be nice to see you hope your evidence was strong enough back then that you were doing everything you needed to do to make it super strong so that they find that you met the rules that apply at that earliest age would be ideal. If not, at some time between 50 and 54, the earlier the better. And then if not, well, does he meet the rule does their evidence ever get to the point of meeting the 55 rule, which is as long as you can't do as long as you can't do medium, but even if you can do sedentary or light and you meet the other two prongs under the grids, you would win that way. So he'll be judging on every pivotal point where the rules change. He'll be looking at the evidence at that time and the rule. Evidence, rule, evidence, rule. Hi, Dolphin from California. Nice to see you in the house. RD, Kathy Clayton, as always. Date last insured. Kathy mentioned date last insured, but I don't think I see a question about it. So Baxter, going back to it, I don't know what you mean by do you send a letter before or after submitting your paperwork? I mean, the letter is paperwork, isn't it? I'm not sure what you mean. Baxter says, RFC assessment from the neuropsychologist state, I would be absent 5+ days a month, workday off task greater than 20. Would that be in cross-examination for VE? Not necessarily. The judge, your neuropsychologist is not necessarily going to be taken as gospel on what the RFC is. Your neuropsychologist may. I mean, the neuropsychologist is pretty high advanced credentials generally. So it would also be, did the neuropsychologist know you a long time, or did you go see him once and he gave you that assessment, which might not be very credible. He's not going to might not hold a lot of water if he doesn't have an ongoing relationship with you and actually know deep down, what all your problems are and how ingrained they are. When it's a one-time assessment, he's going off what you say. And they know, it's like they call it parroting. The doctor is parroting the patient. But if he was a treating neuropsychologist and he saw you every week or 2 weeks and gave you therapy, and that was his opinion, then if the judge found it to be likely so, he might put that in one of his hypotheticals. That would be an off-task thing, the absenteeism and the off-task. It doesn't really show up in the DOT, but every vocational expert will say, everyone I've ever met anyway, will say, yeah, 5+ days a month would be not able to perform the job full-time to the satisfaction of any employers generally. So that would be a win. But again, does the judge believe that to be accurate? Remember, he's the fact finder. The neuropsychologist statement is just a piece of evidence that may or may not hold a lot of water. If the judge doesn't ask about that, he doesn't include it in his hypothetical because he's not finding it to be probably true, you can put it in just to get the VE to say, no, a person, like you make up your own hypothetical. I hope you have a lawyer, Baxter. You'd be doing your own hypothetical when the judge is, leaves the door open for you or your attorney to do it and say, you might want to use whatever hypo, the general one, or you could say the first one, or you could say for any of the hypotheticals, if the person for psychological reasons would be absent, due to psychological symptoms 5+ days a month, and then during any job he shows up, he'd probably be off task greater than 20%, would there be any of those jobs still available, the ones that you said before? And he's going to say no. Now, again, that's like the fourth hypothetical. Like if the judge did 3, that would be the fourth. Is the judge going to accept your hypothetical as being the one that best reflects you, or one of the other hypotheticals that he suggested? So you really don't know the answer because you don't know what the judge is inclined to find. The greater the more robust, reasonably frequent, regular, and kind of optically supporting a severe condition like 5 days a month, unable to get to work due to psychological symptoms, the more you have for an ongoing and duration of preferably years, the more likely he would be willing to find that that's probably so. If it's a one-hit wonder, a snapshot day from a neuropsychologist that doesn't know you and you just paid him a bunch of bucks to get a good report, they see right through that. So it really kind of depends. So Chick says, happy hump day. Hello, everyone. Hello to you too. Earth One, hello to you as well. Yeah, I'm doing better now, Rain Gal. Thank you. Everything was working perfectly. Everything after the power went back on. Even our internet generally. So I don't know if something got fried. I guess I'll find out. I'm going to get a bill. So I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. Maybe because it's the live streaming. Something that has to do with live streaming, I suppose. Or maybe through this particular company. I don't know. Baxter says I have a certificate for outstanding. Be quiet. Sorry. I have a certificate. Can you guys hear the dogs, even though I have the headphones on? I have a certificate for outstanding stroke care. Oh, I need a zap collar. I have a certificate for outstanding stroke care from Level 1 Trauma Center. Do I submit that with my medical files? A certificate. What is that like? I did well. What does that mean? If it's a medical record, I suppose. I mean, it's outstanding stroke care. We would hope so. Hold on. Hey, go lie down. Shame on you. Sometimes you just got to tell them. And sometimes it doesn't work. They're all excited about something outside. Goodness knows. It could be the FedEx man. It's not the geek people coming back. Let's see. So I don't know, Dexter, does it speak to your condition? Or does it speak to the fact that you're doing great? You know what I mean? Yes, Dolphin, we were definitely running late on this one. Technical difficulties, Delia, for sure. Rangal says, how often should symptom journals be compiled and submitted? You know, that's probably very specific to the claimant, I would think, and the patient, right? I like submitting them, not just like, here's what I would probably do. Submit them to the doctor, you know, in a way that they can't really escape putting them in your file. That could be uploading them to a portal. If you have to hand it to them, which is the worst, always keep a copy. I would fax it to them if I had to, because then you have proof that you sent it. And I would say, please make sure this is included in my file. I need the doctor to have a historical picture of the frequency of my bedridden migraines, my severity of my IBS and bathroom time. You know what I mean? And whatever else might be the kind of thing that you would journal. That way, it's got a better chance of being in the medical record, which does at least a small amount of good relative to you just handing it to the SSA. Handing it to the initial or recon adjudicator itself, I don't think that's going to be worth anything because, first of all, you can say it in your application and your function report, right? If you're in the bathroom that much. And it's just your statements, again, which they can't really award you based on that. When I say putting it into the medical record, it might have a little bit more, but it also might affect the way the doctor reports about you. And then by the time, if it has to go to a judge, it's now part of that doctor's record. The judge is going to see it in the medical record, not as something that's going to be a statement from claimant, which is in a totally different section from the medical records. So there's that. And usually when you're submitting those, it's so that you can discuss with the doctor, you know, we haven't seen that medicine change the frequency of these migraines or the duration or the severity. Should we, are you looking at other therapies I should use for the migraines? So there's usually other conversations that can go along with it because you're only going to submit the journal if it's kind of a severe thing that would really be taking you off task, like we were talking about before with Baxter, taking you off task for physical reasons from what would otherwise be at your workstation at work, right? You're in the bathroom or you have to go lie down on the bathroom floor because of a migraine. How often? I would say it depends. Like if it's something that happens daily, like an IBS thing might be daily. It's really hard to say. I would think every 3 months is not too often. It gives a lot, kind of gives a durational trend thing versus if you just give a week, it's just 1 week, kind of shows more. But there could be reasons and times when you would do it more frequently than that, When we submit them, because for us, it would be us submitting them after we've looked at them. And I usually do a cover letter saying, as you can see, there were 7 days in August that, Rangal was in with a bedridden migraine. It totaled so many hours, or so many days. And in September, it was this many. In October, it was only 2, but they lasted for 3 days each. That's 6 days, And so I kind of sum it up for them so they don't have to try to read it and figure out the math. They're going to look and make sure I'm telling the truth, I'm sure, but if they care at all. But I like to give them here's the summary of what that says right on the top, on a separate page. And then, present it that way. So at least they could see the waxing and the waning. And, even on the best of the months, it's still not consistent with satisfactory work attendance or whatever. Deli's asking about membership. I have no idea. Just saying. I think you can just click it, right? If you're already a member, are you already a member? Probably wouldn't be joined. I would think there would be an upgrade. Our Willie says OPE. What does that stand for, Our Willie? Okay. Civil Chick says black oval next to notification bell. Heather, good afternoon to you too. Okay. Kathy was saying that Durham, North Carolina had a really bad storm last night. Yeah, it's those summer storms. That is for sure. We now have flooding, but where I live, I don't get it. But people like a mile down the road can get it. I mean, I live on a, like this, a hill, so everything just goes. Heather is saying, we had so many without power and flooded basements yesterday in Maryland, and many without power last week for up to 2 days. Yeah. And it was during that hot time, I was trying to, I don't know if it was my husband saying it. Would you prefer a power outage in cold or in hot? I feel like it's still better to have it hot in a way. I don't know, maybe not. Just because I remember when we'd have power outages and my kids were toddlers and I would be like really scared. But we had a wood burning fireplace then. We don't now. We have a propane, but you kind of have to have little, I think for the fan to run, the electricity has to be on, but you could still have the propane, I guess, on without the fan. You just have to bundle up to it like we used to do it when it was back in the old days when we used the fire wood. And of course, in the cold, you can also bring in, portable propane heaters. Just be careful, right? Sybil's saying I had to get my computer to stream to the cochlear. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I never even think of that. I don't really know how those things work, though. I do know they can be conducive to getting a year of disability, though. This is Heather, is it best to request access to your file over the phone or by mail? Should POMs still be referenced, or are they more cooperative giving it recently? I wouldn't know if they're more cooperative because every person you get on the other end of the phone is different. You could do both. You could send the 3288. They're probably going to require that you do that anyway. Sometimes I feel like they need your signature in case they don't know who you are. You wouldn't be asking the adjudicator, though. You would be asking the field office, because she says, as requested, I informed my adjudicator along the way after my appointments. However, between my first and second denial, they only have 14 of my relevant appointments listed out of greater than 60. They listed your appointments? That's unusual. They grouped all of my Johns Hopkins visits. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Where would you see such a thing that they grouped? That's not something that would typically be in your denial letter. They'll say, I have reports from so-and-so dated whatever date. So I don't really know what you mean by that. Have together rather than listing which of my 8 physician surgical report and or admissions they have on file. They're not going to itemize everything in your file for you in your denial letter. It's a denial that's just like, we got this report, period, and story. We didn't get this, but we don't think we needed it, that kind of thing. So I'm not sure what you're expecting from them, that you're not going to get it that way. So I would, if I were you, get the entire file, do whichever way you got to do it. If you're heading to hearing, the hearing office is very good about it. You just call them and just say, I don't have a CD reader. I need it by email. And they will email it to you. They should be much better than the field office, immensely so. Because imagine if you were at the hearing, and which is being recorded and is now like part of the record for appeal all the way up to the federal courts if need be. And you said to the judge, I've been asking for a copy of my file so I could see if everything's up to date, and your office didn't send it to me. The heads would roll. They know that the lower levels don't do squat half the time and they take forever, but once you get to the ALJ, it's a different story. Kathy says, would date last assured be December of 2024? I have no idea. That would depend on something you didn't tell me, I don't think, right? We do have a service for calculating out people's DLIs that are not our clients if anyone ever needs it. I think it's like $24 or something. Just doing the math and the charts and stuff with all the credits. You have to have it's based on your earnings. So if you have your earnings statement, can do it off of that. Sybil says, I watched your videos on mental consultative exam. I have mine Friday. Woohoo. I am anxious. I don't be anxious, but everyone is, so it's not unusual. I don't feel comfortable around new people. Hopefully I can use my written notes. Nobody's comfortable around new people usually. Even salespeople, I think, they just know how to hide it. Hopefully I can use my written notes. I forget stuff. Appreciate the videos. You're welcome. I appreciate you. I don't know why, you're not going to forget stuff like when were you born, but you don't want to use written notes and take notes when they says to you, can you spell world forward and backward? He doesn't want you to read it. He wants to see how your memory is. So with all due respect, the worse your memory is, that's impactful on what kind of jobs you may or may not be able to do. So you don't really want to be memorizing, over the top or writing it down so you can get the answer in when it's supposed to be testing your memory, If you're referring, though, to examples that show him how bad you have a panic attack, if there's like something where you can just is there like a memory trick? You probably could write it down there, but you don't want to be writing a book and reading it to him. I would think, you could just give it to him if you're going to do that. Just be like, this is the examples of what has happened to me. I just don't know how seriously he's going to read them. I don't know. You never know who you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates. What if you have notes about, the 5 incidents that you want to tell him about? Maybe, a quick little phrase will trigger your memory so you can then describe it to him. Heather says, they have me where they want me, ready to give up. Oh, don't give up. Most days, I just don't have the strength to fight this, but $30K in back pay is tough to give up on when the bills are in collections in court. Yeah, yeah. You know, not to hawk bankruptcy, guys, but it is not the big bad word it's been made out to be. It's something that people might want to consider sometimes when they want to get back on their feet and not have bills that they're going to pay with when they do win. And now they're living like a pauper even more because they're paying off these creditors. Sometimes, you know, getting that clean slate, you got to build your credit over the next few years, but aside from that, it's worth it. Otherwise, you constantly have bad credit and constantly have creditors calling you on top of having the bad credit. So I don't know that there's a huge amount to lose, but every case is different. And of course, it depends on how much you're suffering under. And I definitely don't think it's something to be ashamed about. I really don't, particularly when you're medically impaired and can't work, you know? It's not like you just went and bought 3 motorcycles because you got a bonus for Christmas. And then you're like, oh, shoot, now I got to make the payments on those, pay the insurance. And, you know, I don't earn that much. Well, obviously that would have been a silly purchase, but it's different when we're in it. Why are you in here? Arvin, he let one of the dogs in. Sebastian says he was a paramedic and I received an outstanding stroke care for treating a patient. Okay, this is not, it's about you being superior at your job. No, don't send it. It's not relevant. Hold on, I gotta let this dog out of here. Otis, come here. Anybody want a dog? Anybody? I've got 3.5. Rangel says, your answer on symptoms makes perfect sense. My PCP is the type that does appreciate that too. Oh, good. KU Thunder says, good afternoon, Stephanie. Enjoy you last week with Jonathan. Yeah, it's always fun. Appreciate you sharing your expertise. It is my pleasure and my privilege. Thank you, KU. Trincalo. Why are SSDI being now targeted for overpayment out of the blue if they effed up? Not right. Except that it's not true either. It's not out of the blue. And every overpayment, when you get overpaid on something, let's say you're at a store and they give you $100 back instead of the dollar you're owed back, it's an overpayment. You got to pay it back. It's no different. If an error was made, and usually it's an error by the worker or the recipient, you know, imagine if you didn't have to overpay. Everyone would be purposely filing and getting overpayments, and then they don't have to pay it back. It's like found money bonus lottery. So the overpayments have to be paid back. That's a fact. If it's going to be an undue hardship, there's a hardship form. And a hardship can't be, well, I'm not going to be able to pay my Macy's bill, you know, my clothing bill, if I have to pay this. Obviously, the credit cards don't matter compared to paying it back. It's whether you can meet basic standard of living with a roof, basic food, and utilities. And that's it. And I'm sorry, it's rightfully so that way. I know that might tick some people off, but when you're asking not to pay back the very fund that we're always worried is going to go crumble because there's been fraud, there's been overpayments not received back, you know, et cetera, not to mention the waste they do in the government. You know, we either have a fund and we take care of it or we don't. And we just treat it like dung, and then it's going to go, you know, down the chitter, if you will. So it's not out of the blue, Tranquillo. And I'm not saying that you were saying any of the things that I responded about it. I just want to be very clear about the importance of overpayments being paid back when it's not going to be a hardship. Even if it's $20 a month, it's something. It's not out of the blue. They've been doing overpayments for over 21 years. I suspect the entire time, but I've been doing this 21 years specifically. It has not changed. It has not changed. In 2024, some knucklehead, probably for political purposes, decided they were going to say, we're not going to collect these. They wanted to leave it to the next people to have to suffer through the bad news. So that's what that's about. They did that for maybe 6 months, the last 6 months. And then obviously, you know, people had to get fed. So they had to do something. And so the next people that came in, they started doing something. But it has not changed at all. What changed was when they put that little sabbatical on it so they didn't have to do it again for political purposes for like a few months, you know? I mean, it was kind of obvious. Obviously, I had to go back to normal. You can't keep taking out of the fund for people that are not owed it. And I think the fund's going to still exist for those that do. And the amount that's due. So I know an overpayment is very painful. If it's a hardship, I really encourage you to file a hardship. If it doesn't quite meet that standard, and for most people it might not, get on a payment plan. And aggressively pursue one, you know, depending on what kind of difficulty it would be above a certain amount. I've seen people go, you know, get $20 a month. You know, if you have a decent income, that's not going to fly, obviously, but they do work with you. And some people who don't, they're not going to die without their benefits because they have a well-to-do spouse, maybe earning, you know, or even savings. They might, some of the times they're like, I owe $8,000, just take it out of my next 3 checks. Boom. And they want to be done with it. And I understand that too. But if you are working or receiving monies on SSI. That's where that's one of the biggest ones come into play. And honestly, that's the people that will most likely also get the hardship waiver, because if they're on SSI, they're very low income to begin with. But again, there's like a tension between, not taking even $10 a month from an SSI person who's only getting $1,000 a month. And then that turns into encouragement to bring in money, not record, like not make right when you bring in income and you're still collecting that same income from the taxpayer with SSI. So it's a whole, I think, a balancing of the tensions of, you're trying to be compassionate, but on the same token, sometimes over compassion encourages people to be sloppy and get overpayments because it's more money in their pocket. That does not fit with the program of what they signed up for. So sorry, I just got to give it as it is, guys. I know it could tick off some people, but it's the realities. So Shepdad says, my PCD, do you mean PCP? I think maybe you're just saying primary care doctor. Sorry. Sent me to psychiatrist for past PTSD and new issues from lumbar back. Shepdad had a fusion in the past and needed cervical surgery. Okay, to be scheduled. In recon now, how would you ask shrink for a can't concentrate letter? Well, you shouldn't have to. If your psychiatrist is worth his weight in gold, he's going to be recording all your complaints at every visit of how you are complaining of poor concentration, focus, memory, being distracted all the time, racing thoughts at night, can't sleep, racing thoughts during the day, can't stay focused when the wife is talking to you, or the husband or whatever. You could be forgetting where you're going when you meant to go to the store, but you were distracted and you went the other way. Although sometimes we all do that. There's no one way to ask a shrink to do a letter. If he's doing a letter that says that you can't concentrate and he has not mentioned that in his records before, he's probably just going to kill his credibility. Because if that was a fact, I mean, that's an important part of your functioning, and he just somehow didn't mention it, for the last 3 years you've been treating him. So I don't know that that's the best thing. That's why you want to have consistent, regular, as frequent as reasonable visits so that you keep repeating it. And then, like, if you order your own records, let's say you haven't even filed yet, or in the beginning and your pro se, order your own records, see what they say. Is he recording what you're doing, or is he a piece of, lazy bung up there? Because, that is what, if he's treating you for your symptoms, why wouldn't he be talking about what they are? Do you follow? Asking him for a letter without knowing what's in his records is very risky, because the second he says something contrary to his records, boom, credibility can be shot, or talks about something that he never bothered to mention in 2 years of treatment. How credible is that? You know what I mean? He's just going to look like he was paid to do a report. And he's, as my old boss used to say when we used to do trial work in insurance defense, it's a paid whore, plaintiff's whore. Swear to God. That's what he used to say. Of course, the defense had it too, and we were the defense. We had our paid hose also. Kosher's in the house. Hi, Kosher. Virginia Gomez says, good morning. Can it take longer of a wait time if 2 cases are merging together? One is ongoing at 3 of 5 at DDS, and one that was remanded to see an ALJ. Generally, I don't really see that happen, Virginia. So they will keep them separate, potentially, or expedite the one at DDS. But I've seen, like, I had one that was remanded with a prior case was remanded by a different attorney. I was representing the guy on the new case. We won the new period. So it was the day after the ALJ hearing that he was fighting for remand on. We won the period from the day after and going forward. So that old case still was waiting for an ALJ hearing on that old period. So they can decide that you win at the DDS, and they're going to give you a date. Since they're not looking at the old time period, they're only looking at the new at this point, and they will give you benefits from here on forward. You're still going to have that hoped for win on the remand with the ALJ. That'll give you the back stuff too. But he got paid on this one, and then ultimately, I'm not even sure if I recall what happened on his remand. I don't recall. That's a case I never got paid on, by the way. It's still sitting in my one, but didn't get paid. I think I have 4 in there right now, but only 3 of them are old, like 5 years old. I'm not holding my breath, obviously. So Virginia, I don't think that's a huge problem, though. And I should say, Virginia, that if the DDS gets done, denies, recon, denies, then they will merge for that hearing. And they'll do those 2 hearings together. That way, why have 2 when one judge can determine both periods? Oops. Carrie's in the house. Hi, Carrie. The adjudicator called and asked about my job timeline. Okay. Yeah, they do this sometimes when you're in a grid area, and this is why my people are not to speak to the adjudicator on this, just so they can't. Sometimes the questions can be leading, so you answer in a certain way, and it's not saying all adjudicators would do that, but I've seen it happen. So I'm always like, no, I'll get the information from you if I don't already have it, and I will talk to her and give her the information. And I usually put it in writing, the answers, and I'll have my person initial, and the letter will go to the adjudicator. And I get pretty firm with the adjudicators because I don't want them talking to my person. They hired me for a reason. It's my job to make sure they can't get sabotaged. But Carrie does go on to say, I'm 55 plus. I'm wondering if she was trying to compound my job. You mean a composite job? She said, I'll find out soon after my medical. She might have been trying to see if it was a composite job, and or usually it's to find out if any of those skills you had at your old job, you probably can't do your old job, is my guess, maybe for physical reasons. But she wants to know if any of those skills that you learned would be transferable to a less physical job, in which case then. So until you know what those transferable skills from your old job are, you can easily sink your ship. I hope you didn't. They're not all trying to sink your ship, by the way. I just don't like to leave a crack where if I get one bad adjudicator who just asks things, in a way that my person isn't going to understand the nuance, it's not happening under my watch, each and every one. Even if it's like a 15% chance of occurring, it's not going to happen to my clients unless they screw up and don't listen to me and pick up the phone and talk to the person, which has happened. Kathy says, sorry if it's a duplicate. Worked one job, November 1986, had to leave work in December 2024, date less insured. Awesome. Okay, I could figure this one out just from what you just told me. If you were always at that job and you had no year in the last 10 years where you earned under SGA for the year, so let's just say it was full-time the whole time. Even if you lost half a year, the other half of the year probably is more than SGA, which right now is, I don't know, is it 17,000 or 18,000 or 6, something like that for the whole year. That's all the 12-month monthly SGA times 12. So I'm assuming since you worked through the end of December, that you actually got all your credits for December and all those prior years that you were working. That's 4 per year. So that means you will have 5 years from 2024 to still be insured. 2025, 2026, 27, 28, 29. December of 2029, December 31st, 2029, from what you just said here, I would expect to be your DLI. December of 2029. So you are almost halfway used it up. So you got a good DLI. I mean, it's still in the future. 2030 is even better. 2031 is even better than that. Okay, so Dolphin asks or says, impairments are an important topic for anyone needing to know the difference between disability and an impairment. So often I need to clarify to people who think I'm not disabled. And you already won your case, right? Well, I look at it this way. Almost everybody that walks the face of the earth has an impairment. Maybe not the super young, but, it could be, let's say we're all over 30, everyone's got something wrong with them. It could be I have glasses. My eyes are impaired. However, when I wear the glasses, they are no longer considered impaired. They're 20/20. So because the treatment works to make my vision what it's supposed to be, my capacity to see, it's not an impairment that would be considered severe, I think. You know how we have to find the impairment that's properly diagnosed? Yes, I have a need for prescription. Is that a severe impairment? In other words, does it limit the basic work functions in any way? And ironically, yeah. So what does it mean if I have glasses? Well, I don't even know what it means. Like, I'm sure I could still be a pilot, right? Doesn't mean I couldn't be a brain surgeon, but it would affect so little that it's not going to have a ramification on this 12,000 jobs. So I feel like we're all impaired, and some impairments are so pervasive that they rise to the level of disabling us from full-time work of any kind that exists. The jobs have to exist in substantial numbers, not like the miracle job riding a unicorn across the sky. That job doesn't count because there's only one. And I think my cousin has that job. So impaired versus disabled. Yeah, it's a big difference, right? You are so right there, Dolphin. Heather says, yes, it just says who they received information from on what date. Right. That's not the data. That's not the visit date. That's just when they received it. It's almost a ridiculous denial letter. Some list names or a specific office within healthcare system. Yep. I'm requesting hearing now, hopefully submitting it today. Yeah. And when you do, you're doing it online, right, Heather? Maybe next week, call the ALJ and say, can you please email me a copy of my file? And you could even say, and how do I know what's come out? Can I call you when I need to see if you got something? Or, I want to get my file now so I know what they didn't have below because they didn't send me a copy. But can I, I want it from you. Can I also get one, maybe like a month before the hearing, or at least call you and see if my list and what you've seen in what gets emailed to you now and what you've added to it, and just to see if there's anything more. I want to make sure that you have everything. Because when you get to that hearing, Heather, the judge is going to say, is the file complete? I have here in the medical portion, which is section F, 1F through 25F. Is there anything else we're waiting on? And if you know that 1 through 24F were what were there when you got denied on recon. And you sent in 3 things, not 1, medical evidence pieces. That would be 25, 26, 27 is what you would at least expect it to be up to. You're going to want to talk to them about it. So they tend to be pretty good. They're not like working with the SSA lower levels. They're not perfect up there for sure, but their office is more professionally run and more, I think, claimant friendly. All right. But that's what you're going to want to do. You need to know what's in there. If you have a representative, guys, they can, unless they barely ever do this, they can see what's in your file on any given day. So they can go in there and see what is up to, 30F or whatever. William S. is in the house and says, hi, just wanted to say hi. Hi, William. Thank you. I appreciate that. After my morning, I definitely appreciate that. William says, wondering how to find the disability videos. The algorithm only brings Friday and Sunday to me. What algorithm? The channel, I don't know, guys, maybe you could explain better because I'm pretty stupid on this, but I know the channel's called All Things Social Security. I could even do this. I can even link it. I mean, you're in the channel right now. Let me see. I hope I don't disconnect this because you know me, I'm kind of an idiot here. I know if I go to a particular page, I can get what I think is the link to the channel. I don't even know what it looks like for you guys when I do that. That doesn't even look the same. Oh, here it is. I think if you go here, am I right? Am I right or am I wrong? Now, where are you guys? Here we are. If I put this in, I'm putting channel William. Hopefully that will. Yeah, I got to tell you, I use YouTube a lot for other things, and I subscribe to certain things, and I can't find much either. And I don't know if you're on your phone. I do much better when I'm not on my phone. I'm not a phone person. I mean, I am for certain things, but not that. Don's in the house. Hi, Don. Don is TDIU 100% PNT for back fusion, radiculopathy in both legs. I'm so sorry, Don. And thank you for your service immensely. 58 years old, soon to be 59 in September. 58 years old, soon to be 59 in September. Recon with mental health and back on 428 and 429. FQR since 619. FQR. I always think that's good. I think I have high hopes for you. So hang in there. I think FQRs can technically go either way. I just happen to see the heavy and the positive. And I think I'm going to put a video out on this newest thing. I don't know if I told you guys last week. I think I did. I told you that my person had an FQR. We didn't know. This is on recon. We didn't know. Yeah. Recon. No, initial. FQR was about, I think this is the right one. Well, it might not be. I'm thinking there's been so much going on. 2 FQRs that I've been aware of in the last 2 weeks. There might have been more, but these are the ones that stick out to me. I went and looked at the DDE after. So these are all initial and recon. You know, guys, I'm really big on trying to win on initial and recon for my people. If I can avoid having to drag it out to a hearing, we make best efforts here. And I know that sounds weird. That's how we roll. But I looked at the DDEs in both cases. There were 2, that's disability determined explanation, 2 of them in the file for June, say. Well, one's July, one was like the 30th of June. So that's the time frame. And I'm like, 2. I look at the second one, and it is correcting the one from the week prior, it's a few days prior. So each case had 2 in it, and they were a few days apart each. The second one, the first one awarded, but gave X date, which wasn't the alleged onset date. It was something after. The second ones agreed the person was disabled, but thought it should go back earlier and awarded them more. Now, I've never had that happen. Now, granted, we didn't see FQRs. Like, they didn't really tell us things like that in the past. But looking at it, I'm like, federal quality review is paying my people more than what the adjudicator wanted to do. They said, no, it's got to go back. It should go back further because of this. Once, at least one of them, it was a technical thing, and the person was making the mistake. I was just, and the evidence didn't agree with it. I was shocked. This is something I reviewed last night. And I'm like, well, gosh darn, everyone says they're trying to deny. I'm like, look at them. The state worker wanted to turn the person in his state down or give him a less favorable, not what he asked for, onset. And the FQR, that's the federal workers, said, nah, it should get going back further. So, when you hear all this clickbait silliness about people trying to take you out and and it's not really that way. Each case has to stand on its own, and this was stuff I've never ever seen happen before, where it's an FQ. I've seen FQRs be positive. I think they're largely positive, Don, which is why I'm feeling not very uncomfortable with you, given everything you've described. But it was surprising to me to see an FQR not just say, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we look, yeah, you follow the rules, it's fine. They said, you didn't follow the rule. This guy should be getting more money in back pay because he was actually disabled before you said, as per all the evidence. Two in like less than 2 weeks. And I actually went back and looked at the other one more closely to see if that happened too. And that's when I was like, oh my God, they both did that. It was awesome. I'm like, yeah. And not to be on the greedier side, but that means usually a bigger fee for me if we haven't already hit the 9,200. And so we'll take that. It helps cover all the ones that are feeless, the feeless ones. Let's see. Civil chick is talking about something civil. I don't know. Civil saying most take it for medical bills. I think you're talking about your firm prior to the bankruptcy, right? I think that's true. That's probably the single largest reason. And sometimes it's just people when they're young, they make bad decisions. They think life is going to be a lot more cushy than it is. And, we're told we have to have that iPhone and all that data when maybe we didn't have to. I don't know. You know what I mean? Particularly if we're not working with it, and it's not like, I don't know. It's like we have all these luxuries of the highest standard of living on earth, but obviously they cost money. I was saying it before. We used to have TV for free. Anybody remember that? We're all in the same age group, many of us, right? TV was free. Phone was like $8 a month, but you had restrictions, right? You couldn't call out of your area. I think that's when, I don't want to say the company's wrong. Wasn't it AT&T that was like the monopoly that they broke up because there was no competition in the prices and all that? But then technology came and cell phones, I remember when there were no cell phones. I was an adult and there was no cell phones. It's kind of a young adult when I came in maybe, but younger. Don says no CE as evidence recent. Recon on 5/8/26. Well, I'll tell you, you had a recon of 5/8/26. You have an FQR since 6/19. The FQR's been there a while. Usually they're faster than that. So I don't know what that means, but usually it's good. Not usually as good as what I just described, though. Woohoo! But that was just amazing. It wasn't even like the wins from the adjudicator were horrible. One definitely couldn't go back to the onset date because the alleged onset date we'd put was actually the original one, and he'd already been denied at ALJ on a different case without us. So, but we put it in there anyway, even though we always have a note, like technically we know it has to be the day after the ALJ decision. And they awarded the person the day after the ALJ decision on the old case because the evidence was just now better. And they're not putting down the judge. The judge didn't have the evidence. Some of it had been missing or whatever. So, but we were fortunate enough to be able to get it. So it changed that vernacular. And now they at least could give it to him the day after the ALJ. Sybil says she would take the dog over the kid. I have 3 dogs, and I often have a foster dog here. And they're all so sweet and nice in their own individual way. But when they're all together and that barking, I was down at 3:47 in the morning this morning because one of them, the Bernese, was barking. She wasn't barking like she saw a rabbit or anything outside, but she was barking like just a steady. And I'm like, my red, I'm seeing red, right? 3:47 in the morning. And I knew I had to get up early this morning. So I come down and I see the garbage ripped open in the kitchen. Now I have an invisible type of fence thing there. So if they have collars, so if they go where they're not supposed to go, they'll get a beep. Well, the little dude's collar must be loose because I believe it was him. I think he was breaking into the garbage, tipped it over. And I think the Bernese was actually barking that you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be, because when I came down, the big lab was at the bottom of the stairs just looking at me, which was weird enough. Usually he's sacked out on the couch. And the Bernese was standing there like, but she'd been the one barking. And the little one was nowhere to be found, so I didn't know at the time. And I usually have a Ring camera on that garbage so I can know who to blame. And my Ring camera had been not pointing in the right direction for stupid reasons of my own. And when I went back upstairs, I cleaned up the garbage and went back upstairs. And the little one is in the bathroom upstairs, just like quiet and, and I'm like, you did it. I know you did. Because he's the one that doesn't seem to be afraid to go in there. Somehow he doesn't give him the beep. I'll have to figure that out maybe later today. But anyway, I always say it all the time, right, Sybil? I can't wait to be pet free. 5 or 6 years. I am going to take a break. No more dogs for a while. I have concurrent claims, and the prior one, they never sent me a consultative exam agreement form. They don't really need to send you that. You're the show or you don't. And my claim was denied. Did they send you to a consultative exam? Or did they send you a schedule and you didn't go or what? The new one, I did get one, but it doesn't mean they will send me to a C. Okay, so I think what you're talking about is a newer thing they're doing. It doesn't really mean much, but I guess they're trying to feel out. Are you saying you'll go if we schedule this? If we schedule this. Now, if they don't schedule it, it might be because you can win without it. Usually, if they're going to deny you, they will schedule one, usually. So I'm curious about your first one. So they didn't send you an agreement form and your claim was denied. Did you have the CE? Because again, even if you don't, they can still send, they're trying to get the answer earlier before they spend time and resources scheduling with a third-party consultative examiner. So I get the reason why they're doing it. I don't think it's really a bad thing. Of course, any claimant in the right mind is going to agree to go to the consultative exam, even though no one really likes to go to them. But by saying no, you're basically saying, I know you're saying you don't have enough evidence and you're offering me to go to CE to gain more evidence. and I don't want to do it. So no, I'm not going to do it. All right. Well, they don't have enough evidence. So not enough evidence to mean they must deny you. So you're basically saying I'm taking a denial over, going to expand my evidence with a consultative exam. All right. So it's not really hypocrisy. They want to know if you're going to go. If you say yes, then if they feel they need a CE, they're going to then know that you agreed that you want to go and you'll go. So they may as well set it up, right? If you said, no, I refuse to go, then obviously they're not going to spend their time. So I just think that's common sense. I don't think that's hypocrisy at all. Unless I'm missing something, you can fill me in. Heather says, where's the bird? With all that was going on in here, I wasn't bringing her in, like people and being on the ground. And so she's just been in her thing. I might bring her out tonight. I work a lot of times out there and I have a perch. Well, you've seen the perch here, but I bring it out there. It's portable. And so when I'm doing my standing work, because I have to stand, I like to stand a large part of my day instead of sitting all the time. You probably heard me explain before, 30 years of sitting, sedentary job, sitting 12, 14 hours a day. I had some real structural musculature issues with my seat bones a few years back, and sitting hurts. And I was on a donut, and I'd be sitting on the couch with my mom watching movies. And I don't know that it happened out of the blue, but it was kind of out of the blue that I realized how bad it was. And I had to always, I'd come to the point where I had to watch TV leaning on my one buttock because I couldn't sit straight up. So I didn't go to a doctor for it. I used a bit of common sense, and I did go to a gym with some really personal hands-on stuff 3 days a week, and it resolved in several months. So it's something to be said for arduous strength training. Not cardio. I'm not talking cardio. I'm talking building up the repetitions and all that. I can't speak more highly about it for us older folks. I really can't. It's just expensive. But, it doesn't have to be expensive if someone has the motivation to do it themselves. Then it can be super, super cheap. My problem is I don't. I put this, I don't mean you guys, although I probably would do that too. I put, when I have to get work done, when you work for yourself to support your family, your whole adult life, you have to do what you have to do. So, and it's poor time management, of course. I mean, I could get up at 5 and be at the gym or whatever. That's just not something. I have poor motivation. I joined gyms my whole life, less so in my later years, though, because I knew what a failure I was at keeping my promises to myself with it. So I would join, I would show up a few times, then I'd show up a little less, then I'd show up a little less. And the next thing you know, I wasn't showing up at all. And it was a waste of money. And it doesn't really help your psyche either when you kind of quit on it. So having it this way, where it's beaten into me, and it's like a coach really, and they do all the stuff that you don't like to do, like they clean the machines and they change out the sizes and the weights and stuff like that. It's worth its weight in gold. It's just, I figure it's an investment in that instead of certain medical procedures that would cost more and not feel as good. And it really makes a difference for your day-to-day movement too. Okay, and Bison says, and Heather, I'm sorry, next week, I promise I'll bring her, and maybe I'll do a video. There's like a video or two I want to get out, that aren't just like replays of this with some more added stuff. It's just been so busy. What's the next step after being denied from an ALJ? Okay, then you can either appeal to the appeals council. It'll be right in that denial letter. Or you can, if you have a DLI at a date later than the ALJ decision date, you can file anew for SSD. If it's an SSI claim, you might still be able to file anew because there is no DLI, date last insured, so long as you are poor enough. You cannot file anew and have an appeals council appeal running at the same time, by and large. So you have to pick one or the other. If you do the appeals council and they decline to review, which could take 2 months or could take 18 months, as long as and you did have time to file anew then, but you chose the appeals council way to, see if maybe there was something wrong there. As soon as that appeals council denies you, you can generally apply again, even if your DLA is now in the past, which I pray you can prevent that. But let's say your DLI is now in the past because it took them 18 months, the AC to decline you. You can use, as if you get your new application in, I don't want to give the time frame. It's at least 60 days on an SSD claim. It might even be 6 months, but I feel like it's 60. I just be cautionary and get the rule before you do anything. It's not going to be less than 60 days. If you get the new application in fully right away, they will give you the protective filing as to when you filed that appeals council appeal. That will be your new application date. So that could be 18 months earlier. And that's when you applied. And now they're just figuring it out now so that if you win, it can feasibly pay you back all that if, and the new application, instead of being now where you wouldn't get all the back benefits if you win because it never goes 12 months before, now it would be protected. So, and of course, if you lose at appeals council, Bison, you can appeal to federal district court. You can figure it out and do it yourself, or you can hopefully get an attorney that does that. And they generally do it at no cost to you because they get paid in other ways, kind of like we do with this regular stuff. They are hard to find though. They're not going to represent you unless they think there's a decent appealable issue in there. So it's not a matter of whether they believe you're disabled or not at all. It's whether the judge left a crack in terms of the steps he had to follow. Did he drop a ball someplace? And that's what they're going to be looking for. It's not generally a new evidence type of thing. Don says, last thing, sitting, standing, walking 20 to 30 minutes, ortho, surgeon, no repetitive movements. Okay, I think you're talking about you have a doctor that put that in the records. Yeah, if he's your treating doctor, I think it's good. I do. 30 minutes of walking, though, that's not that light. Depends what kind of like RFC you're aiming for. Walking a half hour, that's like a good mile and a half. That's pretty far. Unimpaired people who are just out of shape sometimes will be huffing and puffing trying to get through mile and a half. Kosher says, thank you for that response on overpayment, repayment response. One of my pet peeves. Are you talking to me? So are you saying that I didn't piss you off with my cut and dry tough talk on overpayments? Oh man, there's few of us out there will speak the truth on that one. It's not politically correct, Kosher. Trincala says, oh, thanks for your answer and help. I understand now. Can you pick what you can pay back? Yes, I would like that hardship. I mean, get the rules and the forms for the hardship and payment plan. I believe you can do both. Hardship. I mean, also, if you know you didn't get an overpayment or there's a legal reason why it wouldn't be an overpayment, you can appeal it, but you got to do that in a quick order of time. Right? Sometimes people appeal it, and if they lose, and they're doing the waiver, if they know it's a hardship. I mean, if you know that you're kind of well-to-do, you don't do a hardship. You'll just look stupid and greedy. Payment plan, will they give you what you want? Not necessarily. If you can pay $200 a month and you're trying to pay $20, they're going to be like, no. But, sometimes they want to go at least 10%. So it really depends on your situation, really. And, you're going to have to show your bills, and that's like your basic bills. They don't want to hear about your Barbie doll purchases and stuff. You know what I mean? Where you overspent and you want to pay your credit cards before you pay back the taxpayers. That's not going to fly. But if your basic bills, let's say you have like $1,100 Social Security check, and so you don't get SSI, and maybe it's $1,200, but you don't even get local benefits either, state, because you have that, and they say that's too high. That's not a lot to pay. Let's say you have your rent is $700. You need to eat. Maybe you only get like $60 of food stamps. You have a utility bill. You really are going to be maybe unable to pay stuff if they're picking another 100 from you. And I would think something like that, it would be hopefully less than 10%, because 10% of 1,100 or 1,200 would be $120. And that would be a lot out of when it's that low to begin with. Trincalo says, I paid child support, barely left over any dollars a month, to be honest, plus Medicaid premium. So there is no Medicaid premium. So I think you're talking about Medicare premium. Are you on SSD? Can I file hardship? Then would I qualify? I don't know what they say about. To be honest with you, I don't know if they consider the child support basic survival. I don't know. I never looked that up. So I'd like to think they do, but I don't know that they do. Because, we want people to pay their child support, obviously. I don't know if, working part-time is in your tea leaves or not, but get all those things together and try. I don't know why, you wouldn't want to try. Right? RD, I thought you won your case. Yeah, just refreshing. I had a brain fart. T Cash says, when is Jonathan going to do a live with you? On my show? On this one? He has baby duty Wednesdays at lunch. He did do one or two this past year, but that was before the second baby was born. They've got two grandbabies now. One's a toddler who I'm sure is running around all over the place. And I don't know if he's doing both of them at the same time, but my background is much more brighter and cheery. He's got that nice bookcase, though. I like the bookcase. I love like laid in bookcases, even though I haven't read a book in, let's see, how old am I? 30, gosh, how old am I? 30 years. So let's say I shouldn't say I haven't already. I could count on my probably two hands, certainly four, how many pleasure books I've read in 30 years. And I used to read a book in 2 nights, and I had to quit because I've been reading I'd read my mother's smut books when I was like 8. They were scary though, but there was some smut in them. But do you guys remember Sidney Sheldon, those books? I just took whatever's off the shelf, but I love to read. And I was in law school, and my significant other at the time this is early law school, I guess, an avid reader also. And we would read these like genres of books. And sometimes I'd be up till 2 a.m. reading my pleasure book, and I had to be hopping on a train or grabbing my car and going all the way to Newark, like an hour and 20 minutes away, if I didn't hit accidents, to go to school. And I should have been studying because I have finals and midterms and everything else. And when I got into a book that was gripping me, I could not put it down. And I just did this notoriously. So I just had to, kind of like how I quit smoking, but this is before I quit smoking, I quit book reading. And we didn't have audiobooks. So now sometimes I do more of my news stuff and my investigative stuff through some audio stuff, thankfully, but and I'll do that. And I do some of my nighttime faith meditation stuff as I go to bed. But Yeah, I haven't read a book in forever. But if I did, when I retire, I'm going to have a bookshelf filled with books, like the one Jonathan has. Very nice. Heather says, I printed a bunch of forms to fill out because it's easier for me to focus on without exhausting my eyes than the computer screen. I get that. I can have my mom type it up from my paper forms this evening. And you can actually do things handwritten. I mean, there's no rule against that. So if you write neat, but of course, if you're saying your hand has arthritis, maybe writing neat is not in your best interest. I would put at the at the end where it says who prepared the form or whatever, we answer this, I would say Heather, blah, blah, but mother, someone else typed it up because my hands won't work. Like if that was the case or whatever. I don't know if you have a hand problem. So I'm just saying when we type up a lot of those reports. We always, at the bottom, it always says typed by like S Joy or whoever. So they know the person didn't type it themselves. They might, if they try to allege that, it'll be like, it says right there, it was who it was typed by, no, the person can't type. Thank you very much. That's why they had someone else do it. But yeah, you can do it by hand. And I get it. Like sometimes it's just easier for people to see it on paper. Everyone's just got their different way of doing things. Shep Dad says, can color blindness help a case? I never mentioned it to anyone. I don't think it's going to eliminate the vast majority of jobs, so probably not. Does it eliminate the possibility of driving a car? I don't think it even does, right? Even though maybe you can't see the red and green traffic lights or the red sign, but you're supposed to know the order of them, right? So you can still drive. So I don't know. I don't find, I would bet that it's not going to be helpful. It's kind of innocuous. Maybe not to you though. You probably have some personal experiences. You're like, that was my color blindness. But in the vocational arena, I think it might not be a huge deal. Bison says, what's the next step after an ALJ hearing? The vocational expert determined that I wouldn't qualify for any performing time to task. ALJ acknowledged my disabilities are severe, but feels I can. So I think what you're saying is after you get denied, so after hearing, you wait for your decision. And then whatever your decision is, you act accordingly thereafter. So I think we already answered the next step about the appeals council. So you can re-listen to that if you want. I'm sure I have other videos in the library on that. Yeah. If it's a denial, you have to decide whether to reappeal. Can you reapply? Can you reapply? Or do you need to appeal to the appeals council? And if you really kind of want to do both, and you can do the first, you could reapply, but then you can't do appeals council and you want to do both, do the appeals council, protect your filing date. And then when you get the decision back from the appeals council, if it's a denial, then you can reapply at that time, and you can do it while you're filing appeal to federal district court too. So it's just during that appeals council time and before that you can't have two claims going at the same time. Bison says, perform medium work. So you got your denial. Sorry if you said that above and I'm forgetting it. Yeah, you got to decide what to do. Heather says, thank you so much. That's so nice of you, Heather. I owe all my knowledge with this journey to you. Oh, you are so sweet. You've definitely helped me not feel like I'm alone with it. I can't thank you enough. That's really sweet to say. I hope everyone that comes here is so warm and friendly and supportive of each other. I think it helps, to know that you're not the only one going through what you're going through. And then if I can share any, more expedition, information just from the years of doing it, I'm very happy to. Bison says, lastly, I'm a 100% disabled veteran and I receive first disability retirement. Thank you so much for your service, Bison. As you know, we're kind of big into that here. My Friday fraud law reviews are always dedicated to our Red Friday folks, our deployed military members. Yeah, the veterans are tops here, as are our current actives. So I appreciate all that you have done. I'm also glad that you have income coming in. So you're not one of those starving people, practically starving. You can get by one way or the other. It's just that you paid for this insurance, SSD as well. So why wouldn't you pursue it? Just like if you got in a car accident, you'd be pursuing the car insurance to pay for the damages. So should you with SSD, irrespective of any other income coming in. Heather says, side note, I do a case evaluation on your page and I have tried to find other attorneys. I'm just too rusty with being 39. It's just that it is hard. There is such a wait list. There's so many people under the age of 50 trying to get representation, and there's just only so many of us out there, and only so many of us that take them. And because we have to have a balance with all of the, the categories, really, that's why there's a wait list. And I know, and I feel bad about that. I think I know your picture. Did you used to have Shantae on there, or do you have another name? But obviously your picture is the same, and I think Heather's the same. But yeah, I know it's hard. And that's, I don't know what your status is in terms of DLI, Heather, but if there's any way you can prevent your DLI from expiring, you might be glad you did. Even if it means you keep applying, and when And if you don't prevail, keep applying some more. As long as you have that part-time non-SGA, dog hair, non-SGA type of income, you can build savings if you're doing SSD, and you'll have a better quality of life maybe, and you'll keep your DLI pushed out to the future so that when you are at an age where, and I'm not saying you're not going to win this time, of course, but I'm just saying generally speaking, some cases it's going to take the person getting to 50, or older. And if you can keep that part-time work, because you can't do full-time, it can really make a difference later. And you might wish you did, because at least at some point the person can prevail, versus having to go all the way to 62 and having killed their retirement now. Killed it. Like, they're going to get $500 a month at best, as opposed to the 2,000 they would have gotten if they hadn't, stopped working or whatever. Just an idea, preserving that deal. And it also keeps your benefit. Hi, Fiona. Tortoise just walked in from the deck. Heather says, completely understand that. Sorry, I accidentally hit send in the middle. That's okay. That is totally okay. Bison says, ALJ acknowledged my PTSD and are severe and other things, but feels like I can perform medium work. Your physical stuff is not, your physical evidence is lacking. It's not as strong as it should be. Medium work is pretty arduous, Bison. I mean, you have to be able to lift up to 50 pounds, right? My doctor says I should not work. Okay, but the doctor is not a vocational expert. He's just, that opinion of his is more harmful when they try to shove it down the SSA's throat than anything else, because they have no credentials whatsoever to talk about work at all. They could say he can't lift 20 pounds. I wouldn't recommend him lifting 20 pounds with that back of his. They can say, he should not be working with the public because he has very short temper and will spout off at the mouth when a customer does something stupid. They can say things that they know from treating you, but they can't talk about whether you can work any job in the economy. And that's the relevant question. All 12,000 jobs out there, right? So the judge is finding that your evidence is too weak to prove whatever level. I don't know what your RFC, what your vocational profile is, but medium work, even a 55-year-old is going to have trouble prevailing if you can do medium work. All right, so the grids aren't going to help. I am glad that you have the FERS disability. Virginia says, I was diagnosed with fibro, lupus, and inflammatory arthritis. Been going to the doctor since 2017 because it never gets better. It never gets better, but deny if it's an ongoing autoimmune disease. I'm not sure what the question is there, Virginia. The question isn't whether it's an ongoing autoimmune disease. They all are, and there's generally no cure, right? The question is, does it prevent you from doing all jobs? Having a disease does not in and of itself prevent all jobs. So that's why you have to be building that evidence of an ongoing and current, as frequent as reasonable. I always say, go to the doctors, all the specialists, for all the different things you have as frequently as you can, except not to the point of being unreasonable, where you look like a fanatic. All right. So some people live up to that. Some people don't, but the autoimmune, I mean, I don't know when you stopped working, Virginia, but you've been treating since 2017. If you were still working to 20, you kind of prove what I'm saying. I had it, and I was, still worked for another few years, and it got worse and worse and worse. So now you have to just prove the severity and how the severity of the impairments and their symptoms and the nature of them limit your RFC, your residual functional capacity to do those work-related jobs. So that's what you got to focus on. Civil got a reminder letter for an appointment. You mean for a CE? Virginia says, number 2, because autoimmune inflammatory arthritis and lupus is more than 12 months lasting. Yes, but they're not disabling for many, many people, maybe most people. A lot of people work with those. You have to show that you are different, that yours is more severe, it's more limiting, and that's on you. And it's got to be through your medical records, not just claiming it, because, words are like, what do they say? Opinions are like? Words are the same thing. Put the proof there. Walk the walk. Get the medical evidence, and then you'll be okay. And it's good you have a rheumatologist that's a specialist that would be right up there to do that, versus a primary care. If you can get a rheumatologist for those kind of things, it's usually best to do that. Kosher says, I wish I could stand just part of my day. I get it. Yeah, like I'll stand and then my legs will ache, Kosher, and then I go sit. When I stand, I don't have my multiple screens. So I do the stuff I don't need multiple screens for when I stand. And then the other things I'll be like now I'm sitting. So I've got here and I've got here. And, Heather says, I can't imagine a sedentary job that long, like the 12, 14 hours, easily. And this past year, it's probably been a lot of days more. I had alluded to, I know I told you guys back in September or so that I think I told you. I'm sure I did. Where I was taking off a lot of hours every day because my old friend suddenly appeared and was very troubled medically and largely needed to be able to get help where someone was going to take care of her and not really live alone and stuff. And I'd gotten an emergency call from an employer when I hadn't talked to the person in a few years, you know, because we weren't close anymore, really. And they're like, "You're the emergency contact." I'm like, "What?" I mean, I had to be a private investigator and go find the person who was nowhere to be found. Found her after 2 days. And then I just was trying to get like FMLA so that we could keep the health insurance for 3 months so I could figure out what was wrong with the brain. And what a nightmare. It took awful. And then like before Christmas, I got her in the hospital. Finally, they wouldn't listen. I'm like, she cannot be left alone, you know, not safe, you know. And so now she's in a place that takes care of her. So, but it was like, maybe it was short of 3 months, but it was like every night. And I was in the middle of a deadline, bunch of deadlines. And then a contractor had farted out on me. I was working till anywhere between 11 and 1 in the morning every single night and getting up at like 6. It was a crazy time. So then I had to like, so this whole rest of the year, I've been making up for that lost time, because even though I was working those late hours, you're still, you know, anyway, it was a little crazy. So that's when it got really long. Now I have a lot more control over it because everything's kind of getting copacetic again. Everyone's in their place doing their thing. And I don't have that obligation. I mean, that was a moral obligation, but you can't just let someone that you used to be friends with die on the street, you know, because they can't, you know, remember where their home is or whatever. Okay, so Heather says, until my brain tried to kill me. Oh no, now I couldn't put in more than 2 to 3 hours on my best 3 to 4 days out of the month. That I understand. That may also hurt my case that I do have 10 to 15 really decent hours per month. No, that's not a lot at all. Definitely not at all. If this is like a cognitive thing where your brain gets tired, I don't know exactly what your medical problems are, but sometimes like a neurocognitive, like you want them to see, you know, there are things where people's brains get so fatigued after 2 or 3 hours. It's like usually due to a organic cause and they don't get it back in. I think some long COVIDs are like that, to be honest with you. Or I should call it long virus instead of giving more accolades to COVID, but you know, long virus disorder, which has been around for more decades than I've been practicing, does that to some people. And it's like they have a certain amount of fuel and then it just is all gone. And now they're low on energy up there. And it requires sleeping usually. And they're not going to be able to think like the brainiac they actually have in their brain the same and need sleep. It's just like they become physically exhausted. And then they can, you know, assuming nothing else goes awry, the next day when they wake up, they got a couple hours to get all the brainiac stuff done. I don't think that hurts you. Getting proof is hard, but I'm wondering if like a neurocognitive battery of tests where they test you, not for a half hour. You know what I mean? Like, and they see where your progression goes of being able to do the same work at hour 1 and hour 4 or hour 8. I don't know. They must have something like that. Tina says, thanks for all your knowledge and sharing. It is my pleasure, Tina. I don't think we've met. I am recently disabled and literally had no earthly clue that there was so much involved. Seriously, I have lots of questions due to the ordeal. I totally understand it. And I'm sorry, whatever's happened to you, Tina. Hang in there. Hang in there. Bison says, I apologize for the multiple entries. I tried to delete them. That's okay. No worries. I don't think it lets you delete. I don't know why. Thomas Harris. Hey, you. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well. Don't be a stranger. I'm glad you popped in. Says, I only read a book when it was required. So I haven't read a book since college. I have some friends like that, and my husband is probably someone like that. I love reading. Yeah. By the time I can get back to it, I suppose. And when I said I did probably at least this many, maybe even hands and feet, over 30 years on vacations, like I might have a book. That's probably not been also in like 15. I don't know. Like, you know, we went to Knoebels in that little farmhouse Airbnb with the kids. You know, for those of you who don't know, my kids are almost, well, one of them's an adult now, one's soon to be. I didn't read it all there. You know, now you're spending your time with your kids and you're like, because they're you know, you're not putting them in the bathtub anymore. And now you're spending time talking and chatting and busting chops and having fun and all that. So, you know, I think reading would be something that I would definitely do if I was lonely. You know, I like talking to my family. I like, you know, whatever few friends I have around here, I like to talk to them. I just, you know, work is kind of my thing right now. I really enjoy it. And there's just so much going on. It's kind of an exciting time with that. But one day, you know, I will look for it. I hope I'm not blind, but that's what I was going to say. I hope I don't lose my eyesight before then, you know, so I can read some of those juicy books that I used to like to read. I did get one, and someone gave me a Kindle. One of my family members gave me a Kindle for Christmas. I think it's a Kindle, and then stole it from me, so I don't have it. But I did buy a book. It was like a mystery with a female heroine or whatever. I don't know if she's a cop. She might be a cop. It's a cop or a lawyer. But anyway, and I got maybe a chapter or two in, but I wouldn't mind being able to finish that, but someone took my Kindle. Shit Slots. I love your name. Shit Slots. That's really cute. I mean, Shit Slots, right? Great channel information. Thank you. I'll tell you, when your power goes out, if you are not already familiar with a 5-gallon bucket and a box of garbage bags, and maybe a whole pack of toilet paper. I highly suggest everyone have that in their house, someplace in the back of a closet. Yep, I just said it. Yep. Sorry, Chits. It kind of, your name gave me the idea. He says, hello from Florida. Great channel. Okay, I think I repeated myself. Heather says, I had a weird year after my name. Okay, but I couldn't remember its significance, so I changed my You changed your label. I get it. I saw the baby. Notice I didn't read it out loud. Name. Yeah. My DLI, I believe, is 1228. If you can do something very part-time, accommodated, maybe go to one of those agencies, if you can do this, that help people that can only work 10 or 15 hours a week, making not a high wage, and it's accommodated and it's short shifts and it's every other day, maybe like 4-hour shifts every other day, so it's 12 hours a week. You might be able to keep that running. I just worry about that DLI, particularly with your age, Heather. I really do. So if you can keep that thing pushed out further, 1228 is 2 years away, really, if you think about it. It's 2.5, but still close to 2. And it goes fast. Hey, James Kibble is in the house. Haven't seen you in a while. How you doing, James? I have Adriana De La Torre on my federal appeal. She's the best. Yeah, she does federal appeals. So does I'll say them, I guess, like Tremol's office in PA. Yeah, not everyone does them. I mean, it's the kind of job where you don't actually have to meet the people or talk. You don't really talk to your clients, which is, for some people, that's a benefit. The more antisocial. Adriana's not antisocial, but she just loves to do it, and she's good at it. So yeah, Joe L's in the house. Why is my clicker not working? Nice to see you, Joe. Yeah, for me, finally moved out of initial stage, and my application was sent to the Disability Determination Service, DDS. Good. SSA message said could take another 6 months for review. Yeah, they're going to give you some average, which really doesn't mean much. I suppose if the average shrinks or goes up or down, we know that things are trending better or slower again. But then you don't see that all the time. You see that once when you get your notice. So I don't know. James says, I do have a veteran-related question. I'll try to answer it, James. If a VA QBQ, is that like a DBQ? From a doctor clearly states severity of symptoms, is the ALJ supposed to look at that and give it weight? Yes, he has to look at it. And yes, he has to assign weight to it. He's going to look at all the totality of the evidence and see, was that supported by the evidence, or is that like an aberration? So he's going to look at the other medical evidence. And then, yes, that counts. It's medical evidence, so he has to. James says, last thing. It doesn't have to be the last, James. I haven't seen you in a while. I'm sure everyone shares a sentiment. Thank you for taking the time to share. Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. Very, very kind. I think where are we? 3:17, but of course I was like 25 minutes late. So we're about almost at the 2-hour mark, guys. I don't see more questions, so we might be good. But UK says long virus is real. I know. And no one would talk about it. And SSA completely would practically take a leak on you when you had a client with it. Because I took them way back. I've been taking them forever. And so I was kind of well versed in it. But he goes on to say post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2 infection is also called post-COVID conditions. Yeah. There's so many names. Or post-COVID-19 syndrome. Other recognized terms include long haul COVID. Yeah, there's a ton. Long hauler. Sometimes the people refer to themselves that way. I've had many long COVID cases. I probably have 1 or 2 now. But before that, sometimes it was a virus that was undiagnosed. Think about how many viruses we have not identified. Think about the flu. They give us a flu vaccine, which is usually not on the mark. Well, I don't take them anymore, but it's usually not on the mark. By the time the flu comes out, it's morphed so much that the vaccine doesn't really do much aside from give you the flu. But I don't know what the answer is, but it is definitely true. Those things can do what seems to be permanent damage. It seems like and I don't know all the science, or all the biology, but it seems to do a lot towards energy. So things that require energy, which is everything we do, physical, but also mental. And I don't know if mental burns through more or not, but I don't know. I don't know. It's the proof is going to be always for people proving that those symptoms exist and to what extent. So any kind of blood markers you can get, benefit. Long durational treatment with the same credible doctor is good. So, and then never forget to bring in all the other things that aren't that subjective, I'm tired all the time business. Even though that aching back is not something you really care about because you're not on your feet all day anymore because you're not working, get the diagnostics. Anyone over a certain age is going to have degeneration in their back, and it'll help prove that, yeah, she really can't do medium work. Not that that's ruining her life, but she can't do medium level work. Boom, 1. So you can't pick and choose what you want necessarily to focus on. You have to sometimes take the other things too. Eat your vegetables, as they say. Heather says, I'll try to make it short. but I know you don't because I saw what you said down below, Heather, but that's okay. You may remember before reading it all, I have residual inoperable meningioma, had issues for a few years, nothing found, diagnosed delirious, found tumor in ER. Years later, completely calcified and encapsulating my carotid artery, optic nerve, and other vital structures. My surgeon couldn't safely remove it all February 2024, so I had radiation in early 26. Now it's just trying to keep it small enough to avoid another surgery. Surgeon already told me I'm stuck with him for life for monitoring and managing it. My resection caused all kinds of neuro issues. So I would think there's going to be evidence of those neuro issues, right? Treatment-resistant chronic migraine, eyes, balance, dizziness, nausea. And you were the one asking about the journals, right, Heather? There is video on the journals, by the way, too. I have not had a single day since my surgery in 24 without some form of headache and eye pressure. Okay, your dilemma, to the extent you're going to have one, could be, all right, we agree. You can't do a physically arduous job. You would have to do a sit-down job. So they just nicked off, say, 2/3 of the jobs. There's 12,000. Now there's 1/3 of them that you need to still prove you can't do. Maybe you would get rid of the ones about using a computer because of the eyes and stuff. You got to really get in the weeds, and it's pretty granular, and you have to, like I say, weave that needle and catch all those things you have to catch so you can get up to the point where you get the trophy of disabled. Not that it's a trophy, I know, but yeah, I wonder if there's something you can do. Something through an agency that works specifically with disabled people for very part-time. Sometimes, Heather, you've probably heard me say this before. I know some people who start in their neighborhood or in their town, and they don't need to make this a full-time income, which is the beauty of it. And they do house sitting for people on vacation. And they do, if you can make $10,000 a year, not even, and probably even less than that, probably like 7, doing things like that don't rely on your eyes, straining your eyes, anything. It could be feeding the cat. I don't know about walking dogs. That might be a little bit too much for you, but watering the person's plants are going away for 2 weeks. You never want to earn more than SGA in any given month, but you want to earn enough to get, I like 4 credits. But even if you get, I believe, 2 credits and don't stop getting 2 credits a year, you will keep your insured status. I believe. Double check that. So what about 3 credits? Then you're still going to, but the 2 credits will mean that every quarter you're about to lose it the next quarter unless you have another credit. So that's why I say don't flirt with it that much. If you can do 4 credits, I think it's great. 3, and it could be that kind of gigger work that doesn't exist in substantial numbers, so it's not going to be held against you, and you're not going to make SGA. So it's not going to be considered past relevant work, but it'll give you, all you're doing it for is to get the credits and not have optics or a job that shows you could do more than what we're talking about. House sitting, watering someone's plants, feeding the cats. Trying to think what else. Drive by, but I don't know if you drive. Sometimes people are like, can you just drive by my house every day, make sure everything's okay? And then people pay for that. So just something to think about. And you pay taxes on every dollar you earn so that you get those credits. If you don't pay taxes and you do it under the table, or you'd be like, I got business expense, I made 0, then you just did it all for nothing. Totally let the taxes go. Pay the taxes on the whole amount, assuming it's, close to the 4. If you're making 15,000, then yes, you can write off 5,000 of expenses. But other than that, thanks for all the great info stuff. This is Joe. See you next week. Good. I hope so, Joe. Heather says that was so long. I'm sorry. It was fine. It was totally fine. Puffles says, oh, that's cute. Hi, Puffles. I don't think we met. Puffles. I had a CE exam July 17th. You have one coming up. Okay. Should I bring any records to the exam? DDS explained they sent about 10 out of 20 total. They're allowed to send, and he sent me for a hand rec, so you should expect the full physical. It depends what are they doing it because they only need to know at the hand, or are they doing it because they need to know about all of your range of motion and all that, and your strength and stuff? So I really don't know. They should say it usually they say something like that in the schedule, the letter. I know you probably don't know what they gave the DDS. Oftentimes they give nothing, so the fact that they give 10 can be good. Sometimes people just think they want to just give their whole file to the DDS examiner, the CE. He's not going to read it. He's getting paid X amount. He's not going to tack on 7 hours of work to make, 1 hour pay. If you had recent MRI of, a musculoskeletal area showing that it's really bad, that might be something I'd want him to see. I assume this is a physical one because you talked about hands, not a mental CE. Yeah. If you have a doctor's visit record that talks about really severe on physical examination, he couldn't do this, he walks with a bad limp, he looks like he's in pain today, that kind of thing. But you're going to want to keep those pages low. Like, I wonder if they mean 10 pages out of the 20 total that their office says that they can send them. There's not like a law. They just know that the CE examiners are not obligated. They're supposed to be finding out what you can do at that what your physical strength is. So it really shouldn't matter what your doctor said it was yesterday, right? But for human persuasiveness purposes, we want them to see it, right? We want them to know that your MRI shows severe canal stenosis at multiple levels. If he has that, but then you have no range of motion problems and you're able to dance around his office, it might not matter, but you know what I mean? Tina says, one question I have is my work record pertaining to being insured for SSDI. Can you explain it? I don't see it, so I can't really explain it. I was a teacher, so did not qualify for SSDI. I think what you're saying is from your teaching job, you never paid in. Did you have any of the other jobs that a lot of teachers do? Like over the summer, a lot of people would like do a different job and they would pay for SSD at least a little bit. Yeah, because if you don't buy the insurance by paying in for it, you're not going to have any, unfortunately. So SSDI is insurance that you pay premiums for, Tina, and it's through the FICA tax that those of us that didn't opt for a job, like some teachers' jobs that teacher could opt out of SS, and many did because they're like, I get a bigger paycheck, but then you don't have Social Security. And they did that because they had their teacher's pension that they were contributing to. So it's one or the other. Nowadays, a lot of places, the teacher can and or must, depending on the district, I guess, pay into SS as well. And it's great because then they have their pension and they have Social Security. And so very few teachers are living like paupers like the rest of us. You know what I mean? It's like a veteran who gets P&T gets that benefit and can also get the SSDI if he paid into it, which of course he did when he was in the military. And any job he had thereafter. So the SSDI is insurance. If you pay the premiums, you get the benefits if you trigger the terms of the policy. And that's how SSD works, just like any other insurance. You can gain back SSDI insured status. A lot of teachers work before they became, let's say you didn't opt to work in the summers. You just took them off. You might be paying the price now in this way, but I'm sure you had a nice time when you were younger. Sometimes people work 6 years at a tax paying job, meaning SSD tax, not just income tax, because of course you paid income tax before they became teachers. Maybe it was in college, little amount, but nonetheless, they can sometimes, you just need to get for retirement, to have any kind of SSD retirement, you have to have at least 10 years. So you want to make sure you get that at least at any rate. But if you haven't worked in 20 years, you're going to have to work at least part-time, kind of like what I was telling Heather above. If you earn, for you, I would say if you can earn 4 credits, so earn $10,000 a year, it's way under SGA. You can be disabled and earn that, and it's not going to mean you're not disabled. Do it at a job that does not inconsistent with what you say you have limitations in. Make it part-time, obviously. Under SGA, obviously. You can gain back your insured status for SSDI or gain it at all if you never had it. If you already have met your 10 years for retirement, that's good. But you could look at your numbers and see what you would need to do if you're capable of doing that. If you're not, you're just going to have to deal with the stuff that you paid for and bought in for, which is the teacher pension, and it won't be the both. But a lot of districts have gotten away from that, and they have their people pay Social Security taxes too. So when they do leave, they have a much better financial quality of life. Puffle says, I have L5S1 spondylolisthesis, 9mm slippage. Yeah, we were talking about spondylolisthesis not long ago. Don't confuse it, guys, with spondylosis. I think what Puffles has is far worse than spondylosis. Spondylosis isn't, it's a deterioration, but it's not necessarily disabling. Everyone's different, of course. Yeah, I think this is worse. Puffles, you probably agree, right? Heather says, I've been keeping a headache, migraine, log symptoms, hours in recliner or bed. That's good. Yeah. The bedridden ones where you have to have stuff over your eyes to keep out the light. I'm showing the dogs the hand. They want their meal. They certainly know when to tell you, don't they? Heather says, thank you so much for these recommendations. Dog sitting, walking, or babysitting, I wouldn't risk doing with my sudden intensities. Right. And faint feeling. The babysitting I would lay off too. That stops me in my tracks immediately. Yeah, the other things where you can lie down and still do your job. It's like your presence. You're a breathing human in that house. Lights on, lights off. So it's kind of like just so the outside world knows that someone's there. And you don't need to make $1 million. You don't have to be one of those demanding people that do that and think that they, should charge, I don't know. I don't even know what's considered high. $500 a week without taking care of any critters. You could be the person that gets a job because you only charge, 2/3 of that or something, and then just do it well, leave it as clean as you got it and, see what happens. Puffles. No, they did not. The letter, I think you're talking about, right, Puffles? Heather took notes of those amazing ideas to attempt. Yeah, I mean, the biggest difficulty with that one, with the house sitting, is getting the jobs. But there might even be how they have directories now, like caretakers.com. People want to be a caretaker. Like, I wouldn't suggest you be a caretaker of a person, but they might also have house sitting type of jobs. Ask around, do some research, ask ChatGPT. And then if he doesn't give you a good answer, don't assume he's right. The Puffles is going to pick out some pages. Yeah, you don't know what they sent him though yet. So you might be picking dupes. Hopefully they picked good ones, but I don't feel confident they do that. I don't. Because I've had my clients say, they give him my function report. Function report? Really? I mean, they could just ask you the questions. Yeah, keep it low pages. That's true. Hey, Laverle's in the house. Hi, Laverle. Thanks so much for your videos and knowledge. I was approved on Monday. Whoa! So glad to hear that. That's awesome. That was a great Independence Day gift, right? Because now you're more independent. Awesome. Heather says, I'll stop rambling and holding you up. You're fine. Great distraction from what I need to be doing, requesting my hearing. Yeah, thank you so much for everything. Have a great weekend. Yeah, you're going to do it online, right? Super easy. Puffles turned 50 in March. All right, so at least you got at least some little rules that are a little bit better for you than what you had at 49. Heather Shanti says, oh, crap, you just made me think of something. I was doing Walmart grocery deliveries when this all went down. It's 1099 work when you can. Would it hurt me if I filter out large, heavy orders? How can you even do that? That's it. I mean, don't you have to drive? I mean, I don't know how that works. Like, do you have to be available when they want you to? And then what happens? I mean, if your condition is sporadic, you have to hop in a car. You have to be up, walking on your feet, lifting things, even if they're not heavy. Remember, at 39, you're going to be considered able to do sedentary work if you can lift a few to 10 pounds, quite regularly. And if, gosh forbid, it's 15 pounds, now you're putting yourself in the light range. Even a 50-year-old can't win with that. Except small orders, I think I can handle. I don't know. Think about all the things you say you can't do. And with that job, I'm afraid to try it and fail, but I'm technically still a delivery driver. I get it. Don't be afraid to fail. Oh my gosh, everybody, do not be afraid to fail. If I stopped trying because I failed, I wouldn't be here today. I probably wouldn't be married, and I probably wouldn't have kids. It's like a numbers game. The more you try, the more you're going to succeed. You're going to fail a ton of times. And then we learn from our failures and so I wouldn't worry about failing. It just means that job was too hard for you. And then you can find a different one. Personally, I love the house sitting jobs. That's what I'd be doing. You can watch TV. You can watch YouTube videos. Come on. Yep. That's kind of typical, Puffles. He says that the CE letter didn't say anything about all the tests are going to run. Yeah, they're not going to itemize it for you, but just the date, time to be there, and to bring his medications, and that's very typical. Gamillion, how are you, Superman? How about doing clinical trials and studies? I made $700 just checking my blood pressure for 60 days. I'm pending SSI. I'm curious, how do they pay you for that? I assume you're going to get a 1099. Is it going to say that how's it going to be defined? Because technically, you're not really working. Sometimes we're selling our blood, but assuming they do it, if you're paying Social Security taxes on it, yeah. If you want to consider it work, I think you could do that. Now, pending SSI, you better keep track of your income because that's going to negate from your SSI. So you have to make sure that you're not doing it more than SGA at all. If it's considered work, which I would try to push that it is, if you just assume it is and tax it that way and can put it under wages or self-employment income, yeah, that's not a bad gig. So and you said SSI, that's the welfare program, not the SSD. So I'm just trying to think here what the amount. First $65 wouldn't be counted, and then $2 away from $1 away from SSI for every $2 you earn. So certainly 700 is just fine. God, if you could do that every month, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 800, you'd be having all 4 credits. You will eventually be able to file for SSD and not SSI. Million, because you're going to be earning credits. Just don't write off all your mileage. Just pay the taxes on the full amount, assuming it's 10,000 or less. So you get the 4 credits, but not more than that. If it goes higher than that, then maybe you're comfortable writing off some legitimate expenses. But otherwise, you write off too many. A lot of giggers don't realize, but I made 10,000. I go, you wrote it all off. You didn't pay any taxes. You said it was all paying back the expenses of your business, so you didn't get any credits and no Social Security. Heather says it shows us what items are in the order. This is for the Walmart delivery, where it is going ahead of time so we don't have to accept it. You can log in when you can and deny every offer they send if you don't like them. Yeah, that's possible. I mean, you'd have to do what you'd probably want is the super tiny orders, so you're not lugging 10 bags, walking all the way through. You're just picking up and delivering, right? You're not picking, right? Are you picking? I don't think you are. You're just delivering. You probably have to take them out of the thing. So you're going to want it to be, super small. You know what I mean? I would say small order, because what if you're in the big order and you get a migraine? And because you say those migraines are sporadic and you don't know when they're coming and you're a victim of their unpredictability, this job is good in the sense that if you're having a bad day, you already know. If you get that sensation, you don't take any gigs. But is it something that would happen so quickly that you could be on the road delivering a Walmart and it overcomes you. If that's not the case, then that's probably okay. It could still be one of those every day is different, or I'll start feeling it come on, and I know I got to be home and in bed and be very gentle from this moment out, and within 2 hours be home. Maybe it's like that. I don't know. I mean, everyone, obviously you're conditioned to be whatever it is, but it's good that it's like you pick. It's not like on the clock thing. Chameleon says, God, I'm losing. Paid on PayPal. It's like it disappeared. I don't know where your other one is. Did it? I don't think you can delete it, but well, I'm not going to worry about it. Gamillion. Heather says, ironically, I have my fellow drivers deliver my groceries 95% of the time because I can't handle my own items. Because you need big items. I mean, sometimes you're going to have to, heavy thing of laundry, detergent or something. I do drive myself in town when the weather is good, eyes are cooperating, and head is okay. Gotcha. Heather says, I often have to pull over and rest. If any of it acts up while I'm out, I don't do the highway. Okay. So is there ways to like calm it down within like a few minutes? You could pull over in a parking lot and rest your eyes and be like, all right, now I can go the rest of the way home. And then you're going to rest. Then I get dinged if it was late and I'd have to return the items to the store for disposal and someone else deliver. That's what happened when I went to the ER. I had to cancel a trip I had accepted. Yeah. So, it's a way to start. Yeah. And just keep it down. Keep it down. Make sure you know what SGA is, and make sure you also know that as a self-employed gigger, which I think that is, right? You have to earn a little bit more than the W-2ers because the SSA only taxes us on 92.35% of our gigger work, of our self-employed net income after any expenses we are writing off. So if you're just relying on 100 exactly fitting what the 4 credits would get you, you're only going to get 3 because they're only going to tax you on 92.35% of it. So go up a couple $100. Do the math, but I mean, I did it before. I just don't remember what it is, All right, guys, how we doing? I think we're good. Yeah. Heather says sometimes it's 10 to 15 minutes. Other times I park my car and have my mom come rescue me. All right. Did you ever get a parking ticket? You could always say, on this day, I got a parking ticket because I had to have someone pick me up. On this day, I got a parking ticket because I had to have someone pick me up. On this day, here's the parking tickets. And then you would do like a 795 certified, kind of under oath, explaining on these 4 days. These are, usually I have a little warning when it's going to happen, but sometimes I don't. And this happened. And I got a parking ticket. Depending on where you live and if they have parking tickets there. Swear to God, if you're in my town, you're going to get a parking ticket. Anywho, all right, guys, I think we're good. Tracy, is in the house. Nice to see you, Tracy. Thanks for showing up. And I'm going to let you guys go. Looks like the stream ended up working, so thank goodness we got that going. I appreciate everybody's patience who, stuck it out because it was almost a half hour. Yeah, hope to see you next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And if you can find it within yourself to sit through the 12 p.m. pre-recordeds, those really help the channel. So that would be very helpful. Like, share, and comment would be great. And we have our memberships. I know I alluded to this a couple of weeks ago. I have something that we're working on that is going to be probably for sale, but free to members. It's not the holy gospel or anything, but anyway, we're putting it out there. So anyway, just wanted to share that, and I will talk to you guys soon. I'm just scrolling here to see if there's anything I missed. I don't think so. Linko, you come late to the game, and then you ask your question. I'm going to do it though. I still don't understand. My son had 3 strokes. He has heminoposia seizures. He has been on SSI for 5 years, and 3 weeks ago we got a letter from SSA saying he's no longer disabled. Well, he must have done something to make them believe that. So that's what you have to find out what it is. And appeal. It could be that he's working and earning too much. That in time means we're not disabled. It could be that they gave him a CDR and he didn't have any medical treatment anymore, so there was no proof that he still has these problems. I don't know what the answer is, but you guys got to find out, and you got to fix it if he's still disabled. He's got to still have the level of interference with work capacities that he had back then, or if it's improved, it's still so bad that he couldn't do even a simple unskilled 3rd grader job. So find out what the scoop is. That's what you have to do. All right. Heather says, I truly don't even think I could manage it enough to earn enough. I'll go to other suggestions. Luckily, you could do both, Heather. You could do minor gigger work with Walmart, very minor, and then also try to get, customers that need their houses watched. Maybe you get a criminal record background check you can offer with it and be like, I'm an upstanding person, have the time. I just, can't do a lot of other things, so I can watch houses, make sure your house is safe, water your plants while you're gone. For a price. And, helps me get by when I can no longer do the job I had and can't work full time because of this, personal medical problems. Might not want to share that with them though, but, because then some people are like, I don't want someone with medical problems in my house. So maybe don't share that part. But you can still offer it and be like, I'm very reliable and you know, whatever the case may be. I can stay in your house. I mean, ideally you stay there versus coming over and checking in on the house, because then you don't have to worry about driving, unless you hate that whole idea, of course. And then, you know, you could do the other kind. All right. Bye. Veterans in the house. Hi, veteran. You're late to the party too there, pal. Thank you for your service, by the way. It's veteran 31 PB. I'm 100% disabled vet. I would file for SSDI, but the income limit is what got me on the sidelines. That sounds like you're working, so you're not disabled from working. You might be a disabled vet, which doesn't mean you're disabled from working. And SSDI is all about work capacity. P&T is slightly different than that, and not quite so about working and all that. So, but that's good if you're, you know, getting that, you know, hundreds of veterans benefits, and you can still pull on a paycheck. Then God bless. Why not? Right? All right. You're welcome, Linko. All right, guys. Thanks so much. And I will see you next week. And hopefully at 12 p.m. So if you have any questions on anything SS, always feel free to post them under any video, and I will see it eventually, usually within a week, maybe 10 days these days. But I will respond. So, and if it's something that's worthy of a video, I want to get those out there. So that works too. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.